To understand my salvation, I think you have to understand my past. I grew up in an Italian family. We lived on the east side of Detroit, and I grew up around gambling. I grew up around two figures, my grandfather and my father. We had friends named Nick the Rat and New York Frank and Chinky and several guys like that in our lives. It was interesting and colorful, but this is what I grew up in, a great loving family. And we were Catholic, extremely Catholic, and because of the gambling, there were current events on my father and my grandfather, and so there was, it wasn't typical. And I grew up going to Las Vegas, not in my early years, but in my teen years, and went to Las Vegas several times. I went to most of the big fights in Las Vegas. I met with, I've had coffee with Ali and Mike Tyson and Tommy Hearns and all of the big boxers. I met several stars. I must have brought Joe DiMaggio 20 hot dogs at fights because he always seemed to sit next to me. And so this was sort of my past. My goal in life at that time was to, be in business, but also to maybe one day own a casino. I mean, I thought that would be the big win for me, and that was my success goal, if you would. And I would say late 79, maybe early 80. It was late 79 that I was in Chicago. My friend was dating a girl there, and we would go in for the weekend. He would take her out on a Friday night. We'd all go out as guys on a Saturday night, and then have dinner with the family on Sunday. And we did this a couple of times, but one time, and it was October, and I was walking down Michigan Avenue in Chicago, and I ran into him. He went to high school with me. He was a drug user. He was a very good athlete. In fact, he probably had potential to do something in hockey, but he had a drug problem. And I ran into him. At that time, he was a roadie for Frank Zappa for the band, and he had I remember a bearskin sort of vest with no shirt on. It was freezing and windy, and he was so high he could barely push a sentence out to me. And so I took him and brought him into a little diner and got some coffee. We tried to talk a little bit. I remember leaving enough money so he could have breakfast. And I left him there and moved on. And then, magically a couple of weeks later, 2-3 weeks later, he shows up with John 3:16 embroidered on an Armani suit back then. And he has the pendulum swung completely to the other side. I mean, he was just radically changed. And he's the guy that at sporting events would hold up the John 3:16 sign. And I know that the Atlanta Braves sued him. I think the Cubs sued him, and I think the Mets sued him. I know Turner did from Atlanta, because he was in the way, sneaking into games, and he had these signs, John 3:16. Anyway, he went to school with me at Grosse Pointe North High School in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. And he had this conversion. So now he started to drive our family crazy. He was, I would go out to my car, and little Bible tracts would be frozen to my windshield. I'd have to, it was bad enough to scrape the frost off, but I had to get this frozen, document off my windshield. And so my family got to know of his radical conversion. And, I remember even my father saying, maybe he'll live a long life now. I mean, it's just because of the drug use. And so he came over. It was a Sunday because we had bet all of the games, and it wasn't a good day. It was a bad day. And my father seen him through his office window, and I remember him telling me, don't let this guy in. We don't need him today, something to that effect. So I stopped him at the door. I had my foot at the door, and I said, his name's Guy. I said, Guy, you can't come in today. It's not a good day. He goes, Chief, today's your lucky day. And, I'm at the door, and I said, why is it my lucky day? He said, just let me come in and pray for you, and then I'll leave. I promise I'll leave. I said, okay, come on in. So we went into my father's office, and he made me hold his hands. So now I'm in my father's dark office. I'm Italian. We don't hold other guys' hands, okay? But I'm holding his hands, and he's saying this prayer. My eyes aren't closed. I'm focused on getting him out of my home. And he's saying this long prayer. He's shodding my feet with the preparation of the gospel, and he had learned about the armor of God evidently in his 3-week life as a born-again Christian. And so he said this long prayer, and I remember asking him, "Are you done?" He goes, "Well, give me 3 things that you need in your life." And I gave him 3 things. I remember the first one was, I got to pay a bookmaker Wednesday. And I gave him 2 other things I needed. And that was it. We prayed, he left, and I went on with my family, and it was Sunday night. So we go to bed that night, and I'm in one bed, and my brother's in another bed. We share a room, and it was late night, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm awakened, and I feel this. I feel like I'm in a vat of boiling water or oil. I mean, I just feel heat all over me. And I hear this audible male voice say, "I have the keys." So I'm looking around the room. "Jack, are you awake?" I stand up. I hear it a second time. I'm walking around. Now my brothers are in a band. My stepbrothers are in a band. So I figured they have a speaker in the room. So I turned the lights on, and I'm looking around. I looked in the closet, I looked under the bed. I looked all in the room for this speaker, because I figured they're pulling a practical joke on me, because Guy was over that day. And I heard it a third time, lights on, underwear in the hallway, looking for a speaker. "I have the keys." And, I thought I was losing it, So I went back to bed. I'm hot and perspiring now. In the morning, it was Monday morning, we're come down to, as we're all dispersing out to go to work, and I'm asking everybody, does somebody put a speaker in my room? Did somebody, "You're crazy, are you nuts?" And so nobody fessed up to it. During that time, then, and I never equated the dream, the prayer, to what happened. I figured it was a prank, and somebody hadn't lived up to it. Over the next months, lots of things happened. 2 friends of mine had the same radical conversion that were probably a little more like me. One of them, named Dominic, we were going out every weekend, Friday and Saturday night. Everyone would go out, and we'd run into each other. And he had this change because his father had this change. And so I actually went to church once with them. And I white knuckled it. It was crazy. People were praising. I was used to a Catholic service at that point, and so Dominic got saved. In fact, Dominic's now a pastor of a large church, and his son now has a very large ministry. And another friend, a distant friend of mine, had this similar experience. So I've got 2 people in my life that had this radical conversion that I was close to. And then one I went to high school with. And all this time, I'm running into and going to church here and going to church there. And I'm beginning to see this whole other world that I didn't even know existed, of people that actually read the Bible and felt they had a relationship with God. Well, it was spring of that following year. And I seen Guy, I think it was Eastland parking lot. There's an old shopping mall, I don't think it's there anymore, called Eastland, which was in Harper Woods, Michigan. And I seen Guy, and when I seen him, I heard the audible voice again in the parking lot. And it said, "I gave you the 3 things you prayed for." And right then I knew that God was trying to communicate with me. It like really freaked me out. I said, this is really bad. So naturally I didn't want to go to family. I didn't want to go to a priest, because I thought he would think I needed psychiatric help as well. So I tried to ferret my way around to the guys that had this experience, and I started to go to church with them, and I began to learn things. God was speaking to me, and it wasn't audible, but I could feel him prompting me and leading me. And the more I got to know people in the faith, the more I got to distrust them. I grew up sort of street smart. And, now I've got people with, we got big hair, we got, white suits on, and they're talking about money, and everything's about money. And, I grew up around con artists. I mean, to me, they were just moving along the big con. And I remember, thinking, that God is real. I remember this anxiety in me to try and find out what was real and what was fake. I remember because when I talk to the Catholics, it was, God doesn't talk to you. He's busy taking care of people in Africa, and there wasn't this personal relationship. And then when I talked to evangelicals, I wasn't getting to the right people. It was all fluff. I mean, it was all, they would say things that made no sense to me. I had to know why, when, where, how it all fit together. I couldn't just go with what you told me because I just didn't believe it. So I went on this pursuit, and I found some solid teachers in Tulsa, Oklahoma, one of which is named Bobby Yandian, who had a degree in ancient Greek and a degree in ancient Hebrew. I think he had a master's in ancient Greek. It was a great teacher, and he just taught. He didn't tell me stories. So I would go into Tulsa, and I'd get his cassette tapes, and that's how I began to grow. And it radically changed me. It not that I didn't, I was slowly changing from who I was to know, and I was smart enough to know that if God was speaking to me, there was a reason. That I didn't think he just spoke to anybody, but I felt him prompting me and leading me. So that's how I came to find the Lord, and it sort of changed me. So, and I'm thankful for it.